Hi, I'm Arson Kashkashian, the head buyer here at the Boulder Bookstore, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Boulder Bookstore. And I'm here with Kyla Scanlon, the author of In This Economy, and she's here for a very special reason. We've been doing a pre-order campaign with her. She's been doing actually most of the work, which has been wildly successful, and so she was here signing the books this morning. So welcome, Kyla.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
So, from your perspective, what did the pre-order campaign entail, and what were your expectations going in? Because we've now had you sign over 700 books.
Yeah. No, it's been really fun. So I announced the pre-order campaign on social media that they could order a signed copy of the book if they wanted to, relative to the regular copy of the book. And I also offered a free t-shirt and a free sticker if they did order a signed copy, or if the readers wanted to do that. And so, yeah, people have been really excited about it. It's been really fun hearing all the feedback, but it's been enjoyable.
So, In This Economy is you do a series of videos on YouTube and explaining economic things, and so now that's so how did you go from that to doing a book?
Yeah. So I do videos across social media. So I do TikTok, Instagram. I have a newsletter at kyla.substack.com. I have a podcast, and I do YouTubes as well. And then I work with Bloomberg Opinion. And for me, most of my work is responding to the news. But I feel like the foundation of economics education is really important. And there's a lot of really good books out there, like Basic Economics, Economics in One Lesson by Hazlitt. But I wanted to make an economics guide that was fun. So the book has my illustrations, 60 illustrations in it. And it's meant to be fun and accessible, and also like a static place to go outside of the realm of social media. Because when you're talking to people on social media, you're just sort of interrupting their feed, right? Like talking about the economy. And I just wanted to have this serve as a foundation for people who are interested in these topics. So the book talks about the history of money. It talks about inflation. What is GDP? What is the labor market? What is the Federal Reserve? The problems that we're facing, the opportunities that we have. And I wanted it to be all in one place for people.
Yeah, you really cover a lot. Here's an example of some of the drawings and graphs and things. And so, but I was interested because you have a very extensive table of content, and you cover like all sorts of things, like you said, inflation, labor market, supply and demand, all this stuff. But you start with something that you call the vibe economy. So what is the vibe economy, and why is it so critical to the world we live in?
Yeah, so a big area of my research is consumer sentiment. So back in 2022, I wrote this opinion piece for the New York Times around this idea of a vibe session, so disconnect between consumer sentiment and economic data. And the underlying argument of that idea is that it's really important to pay attention to how people feel about the economy, and so that's why the so-called vibes are important, because they're people's feelings. And so that the vibe economy just discusses the idea that consumer behavior and consumer sentiment really matter for shaping economic circumstances.
Yeah, because the underlying data might be saying things should be good, but people may not think things are good. Some people say we're in that situation now to some extent, where the data seems to be better than what the sentiment is.
Yeah,
right?
No, we're in that situation for a lot of different reasons, right? Like we have a structural affordability crisis, we have a housing crisis, elder care is super expensive, child care is really expensive, student loan debt is weighing on people. So there's like real economics reasons to feel bad. Media headlines are really tough to navigate. We've had inflation just be a pressure cooker for the past 4 years. So the idea, though, is that relative to where the economy is, it's far people are feeling far, far worse than they quote unquote should be, even considering the
right, because we have a full labor market.
Right. Yeah.
So people are able to get work and stuff, but it's still feeling a lot of stress.
Yeah, it's really hard to navigate. Yeah, and it makes sense. It really does. But it's really important that we talk about why people feel this way about the economy, because that's how we fix it. And we figure out how do we address this feeling of a badness that's just showing up in economic circumstances.
Do you feel like inequality plays a major role in that? Because we're inundated with news about billionaires on one hand, and then we drive around our communities and we see homeless people, people unhoused everywhere, and we also see in our own lives, like you said, we might have student loans, or the mortgage rates have gone up, or rentals have gone up. So we're seeing it in our and you feel like this inequality with these people who are so rich, that they're going to expensive restaurants and things that maybe you can't do.
Right.
Does that make your situation seem worse? Does that hurt consumer sentiment in a way?
Yeah, so I talk about wealth inequality in the book because it has become so extreme, and it's only, sort of gotten worse. Income inequality has improved, but actual wealth inequality has worsened, partially because those who have been in the stock market have massively benefited, and those who haven't been, which is a lot of people, haven't benefited from the rise in the stock market. Or, if you didn't have a house in 2020, you didn't benefit from that appreciation now. And so it's definitely a big part of it. And the issue with, the comparison to billionaires is that when we get on social media, all we do is compare ourselves to others. And so I think that sort of exacerbates that feeling that people have where you're constantly comparing yourself to the Joneses and saying, well, like, look what they can do and look what they're doing and look what they're doing. But then, it is, there's a bifurcated economy right now where you have a certain segment of people who are just not able to get footing. Like, they're not able to pull themselves up. They're not able to figure it out. And that's because we don't really have a social safety net here in the United States. And then, of course, you have really, really rich people who have just, it used to be like 4% of GDP. The super wealthy used to have like 4% of total GDP, so like 4% of the total economy, and now it's like 18% of the total economy of wealth. I'm rounding those numbers, so I could be a little off. But it's you definitely see sort of this bifurcation to the extremes.
Yeah, I mean, well, the wealthy have so much money at this point. We're in a new age of philanthropy, which I'm not actually a big fan of. It's like if you have so much money that you can give away hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe something's broken.
Sure.
But we are seeing that to the levels like back in the days of Carnegie and Rockefeller, which and I think that's an interesting thing. And how do things like that play? Like, because that would be everybody wants to keep their money, including the super rich, but then they want to be the ones who are directing it rather than, say, if it was taxed at a rate where you could have a security net, and you could have the government maybe deciding what's best economically for the country.
I mean, it's like the tax policy is shaping the election, right? Especially taxes on the super wealthy. They're choosing one candidate over another because of that. And a lot of people don't trust in the government. They say that the government wouldn't do a good job at allocating resources, that the free market has the answer. And I think we can kind of look at the circumstances that we're in and probably say, like, the free market probably doesn't have the answer, because the free market, the answer is essentially always profitability. And sometimes you do have to have the government step in and sort of, smooth things out. Like, there's a really good example of housing in Montgomery County, Maryland. So most of the time, developers want a 20% profit margin on the homes that they're building. And Montgomery County, Maryland was like, well, listen, we're the government. We're going to step in. We don't need a 20% profit margin. So we're just going to build homes and not worry about like making a ton of money. And so now they have like over 1,200 units of homes that the government has built because they've kind of stepped outside of the, private developer realm. And so I think that's just like one example of like the government can get stuff done. And maybe it's good to have a balance between, the private market doing things and then allowing the public sector to do what it is meant to do with our money, taxes.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about is the economics of being an author, because we get asked this question all the time. People who are writing books, people who, have a book to sell, and should they go with a traditional publisher? Should they go self-published? So you're with a traditional publisher. Yes. You're with Crown, which is part of your Penguin Random House. And so can you tell me a little bit of that experience? So did you get an advance, for instance, when you started? Yeah. Yeah,
I did. I got really lucky, honestly. So I wrote this New York Times opinion piece, and Crown approached me and they were like, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, of course I thought about writing a book. I wrote this book back when I was 8 years old about like the little penguin. So I've always been writing and I've always wanted to write. And so when they approached me with that, I said yes. And then an advance came along the advance is based on how much they think that you're going to sell. So it came based on that. I recorded my own audiobook, so I got, paid for that as well. And then when you sell it to different countries, you get paid for that too. And then you get a percentage of like ebook, audiobook, hardcover sales. So it works out well if you kind of like can't take time off to write. Like for me, like I wasn't able to take time off from my day job to write the book. And so it was nice to have this supplementary income in terms of the advance. But, you do have it's a publishing agency, so you kind of have all these headwinds and you have to navigate elements of bureaucracy. But yeah, it was a very pleasant experience. You're kind of on your own in some aspects, but then you have an editor who you can gut check stuff with. When you finally publish the book, you do have a publicist that you can talk to about certain things. So I think it's a good option if you're able to get a publisher, just because of the reach that they do have. But it is also really exciting. Like, I'm a big advocate of doing things on your own path, right? And I think that's like super exciting if you're able to do that and feel comfortable, the reach that you could get.
Yeah, I mean, the economics, the model as a whole is interesting because most authors do not earn out their advance.
Right.
So they get an advance, and maybe they have to sell 20,000 books before they're going to start seeing royalty checks, because the first 20,000 are covered with the advance. And most authors, I don't know what the number is, maybe 90%, it's high.
It's high.
Don't earn out their advance. And so the publishers have paid out more than what the books earn back for the author. But then that 10% can be that's your Stephen King and your Barbara Kingsolver and your Malcolm Gladwell's or whatever, right? So when you look at that as a model, like, it's kind of a weird model, isn't it?
Yeah.
To think about.
It's very similar to the venture capital industry, where you're like just making a bunch of moonshot bets and hoping that something sells a bunch of copies. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of why the publishing industry is probably in a little bit of a disarray, just because maybe it doesn't make sense to continue to do that. But yeah, I mean, the book has been out for 2 weeks and it's been going really well, like, for me. But I know other authors, it's hard. And there's like so much noise out there, right? Like, getting people to read a book, it can be difficult because it's like, well, you have your phone, you have the whole world in your hand. Right?
Well, you're on all that social media, so you're in the phone. So that's good. I think authors are being encouraged to do what you are doing. But it doesn't necessarily come natural for authors. Some authors, that's what they do, is they write. They like to stay in their house and write. They don't want to be on all the social media.
No, it's definitely like a lot. So Penguin will have like author learning series, and a lot of it's about like, how do I use social media to market my book, because like that really is the best way. That's where people are. Like, that's where you go to talk to people. I was very lucky to be working in social media and then have the book come along. It kind of was very complimentary. Yeah.
Was there anything that surprised you in those kind of publisher learning sessions? Like, was there anything like, I never thought of that? Or did you feel, as being somebody who's really adept at social media, you had most of it covered?
A lot of the videos were kind of like, how do you talk about your book directly? And like, in most of my videos, I like to kind of mention that I mention this topic in the book. Like, if I'm making a video about the Federal Reserve, I'll be like, on this page in the book, I did talk about this, and then I'll explain kind of the concept of the video, versus like always talking directly about the book. And so I think that like might be, or at least it's a strategy that's worked for me. I don't know if it works for everybody, where it's like, you don't always talk directly about the book, but you talk about like what the book encompasses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it makes sense because for years, the world's changed, but when newspapers were big, even 15, 20 years ago, it would be better for a book to be featured on the news page than it would be in the book review.
Yeah.
Like, if this was in the news page and the author was interviewed in the news section, that would drive more sales than a book review of the book.
Yeah, no.
And that's kind of what you're saying, because you're making news. There's some aspect of your book has caused the press to talk to you, and that drives the sales.
Because you want to be like relevant, so when you're working on op-eds, which is important for marketing the book, you don't want to be like, here's why my book is so awesome and good. It's like, here's how my book talks about the Federal Reserve and can help you understand monetary policy and like how higher interest rates impact your mortgage payment, right? So it really is just about making it relevant and relative at the same time. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we go, I wanted to ask about your necklace.
Oh, yeah, it says economy.
Do you have other ones that say like Federal Reserve or labor market or?
Yeah. So like, I like to have each of my necklaces kind of represent a moment in my life. So like, they're my chapters, and so I got this necklace a few months ago when the book was out of print, like not out of print, but like out of production. And I got the final copies in the mail, and I was like, okay, wow. And so I just wanted to have this as like, a reminder of how important I think the book is, and like how grateful I am to have had the opportunity to write it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being here and talking with us.
Thanks for all the help.
So that's Inside the Boulder Bookstore. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. And thanks once again, Kyla.
Yeah, thank you.